you gotta go, oh, you better go now. 'Cause how many times do I have to tell you, darling, I want you to stay?
Denny Laine, co-founder of the Moody Blues and Paul McCartney's Wings, dies at 79.
Since you gotta go, oh, you better go now.
His wife, Elizabeth Hines, said he died after a long battle with lung disease. Among other achievements, Laine sang on the Moody Blues' multi-million selling Go Now and co-wrote the Wings hit Mull of Kintyre. Sir Paul paid tribute on Instagram, calling the musician an outstanding vocalist and guitar player. Denny was a great talent with a fine sense of humor and was always ready to help other people, he said.
So long.
We had drifted apart, but in recent years managed to re-establish our friendship and share memories of our times together. Musical youth. Born Brian Hines in the Channel Islands, Laine grew up in Birmingham and was inspired to play guitar by jazz legend Django Reinhardt. His stage name derived from a childhood nickname, Denny, and his sister's favorite singer, Frankie Laine. The similarity to Penny Lane, written by his future Wings bandmate, was coincidental. His professional career began as a frontman of a local band called Denny Laine and the Diplomats, which featured future ELO musician Bev Bevan on drums. But when the band failed a record label audition, Laine left to join the Moody Blues. There, he scored a #1 hit with Go Now and followed it up with a number of R&B influenced singles like From the Bottom of My Heart and Bye Bye Bird. But their commercial success was on the slide, and Laine left before the band reinvented itself as a progressive rock outfit with songs like Nights in the White Satin. His next project, the Denny Laine String Band, also struggled to achieve chart success, and the guitarist took a sabbatical in Spain to study flamenco guitar before joining Cream drummer Ginger Baker in his hard rock outfit Air Force. Then, in 1971, McCartney announced the arrival of Wings, his first band since the Beatles, centered around songs written with his wife Linda. Laine provided guitar, bass, and vocals, giving essential supports to McCartney on hits like Jets, Band on the Run, and Live and Let Die. He had known McCartney since the Diplomats and the Moody Blues supported the Beatles on tour in the 60s, and although he had previously been known as a frontman, he enjoyed the freedom Wings afforded him. I was in the shadows more, but I wasn't bothered by that, he told Billboard earlier this year. I was traveling the world and learning a lot and having a good time in many ways, so from that point of view, it was easy for me. But he was gifted solo sections during concerts on the Wings Over America tour, where he sang Go Now amongst other songs. When Wings dissolved, Laine continued as a solo musician, having already released a handful of albums in the 1970s. 1980s Japanese stare included the Paul McCartney co-write Send Me the Heart, along with several songs Wings had recorded but never released. Future albums included Hometown Girls, Wings on My Feet, and Lonely Road. And the musician reimagined some of Wings' biggest hits on 1996, Wings at the Sound of Denny Laine. His final solo album, The Blue Musician, was released in 2008, and he continued to tour, playing a selection of the songs he was associated with until very recently. His death comes shortly after Wings announced a 50th anniversary reissue of Band on the Run. Although Laine maintained that he didn't do favorites, he held a special affection for that record. The most important album to me is Band on the Run because it was just me and Paul and Linda doing a few harmonies, he said. As musicians, it was just Paul and me, and the input I had on that album that made it special to me. He was on drums and I was on guitar, and the album had a special feel to it. In her statement, Laine's wife said the musician expected to recover from lung disease, but the condition got progressively worse over the past few weeks. He fought every day. He was so strong and brave, never complained, she wrote. All he wanted was to be home with me and his pet kitty, Charlie, playing his gypsy guitar. After thanking fans for their support, she asked for the time and privacy the family would need as we grieve for our loss. The Moody Blues. In 1964, Laine left the Diplomats, and shortly afterwards, he received a call from Ray Thomas and Mike Pinder to form a new band, the MNB5, which eventually was changed to the Moody Blues. He sang lead vocal on the group's first big hit, Go Now. Other early highlights included another UK hit, I Don't Want to Go On Without You, and the two minor UK chart hits, From the Bottom of My Heart and Every Day, both written by Laine and Pinder. Laine also sang on Can Nobody Love You and Bye Bye Bird, the latter of which was a hit in France. A self-titled EP and the album The Magnificent Moodies followed on Decca Records. Laine and Pinder wrote most of the band's B-sides during the period 1965 to 66, such as You Don't All the Time and My Baby's Gone and This Is My House. However, Laine's tenure with the Moody Blues was relatively short-lived, and after a number of comparative chart failures, Laine quit in October 1966. He was replaced by Justin Hayward. The last record issued by the Moody Blues that featured Laine was the single Life's Not Life in January 1967. A compilation album of singles and album tracks of the early Moody Blues, led by Denny Laine, was released in 2006 under the title An Introduction to the Moody Blues. Electric String Band and early solo career. In December 1966, after leaving the Moody Blues, Laine formed the Electric String Band, featuring himself on guitar and vocals, Trevor Burton of The Move on guitar, Viv Prince, formerly of Pretty Things, on drums, Binky McKenzie on bass guitar and electrified strings in a format not dissimilar to that of Electric Light Orchestra in later years. In June 1967, the Electric String Band shared a bill with the Jimi Hendrix Experience and Procol Harum at the Savile Theatre in London. However, they did not achieve national attention and soon broke up. At the same time, Laine recorded two singles as a solo artist, both released on the Darum label, Say You Don't Mind and Ask People, April 1967, and Too Much in Love and Catherine's Wheel, January 1968. Both failed to chart, although Say You Don't Mind became a top 20 hit in 1972 when recorded by former Zombies frontman Colin Blunstone. Balls and Ginger Baker's Air Force. Laine and Burton then went on to join the band Balls from February 1969 until their breakup in 1971, with both also taking time to play in Ginger Baker's Air Force in 1970. Only one single was issued by Balls on UK Wizard Records, Fight for My Country. The top side was re-edited and reissued on UK Wizard and in the United States on Epic Records under the name of Trevor Burton. He and Laine shared lead vocals on the B-side. This single was reissued again as BLNG, Burton, Laine, and Gibbons, as Live in the Mountains for Bird's Nest, a small label distributed by Pi Records. 12 tracks were recorded for a Balls album, but it has never been released. Wings. In 1971, Laine joined forces with Paul McCartney and wife Linda to form Wings, and he remained with the group for 10 years until they disbanded in 1981, being the only 3 permanent members of the band. Laine provided lead and rhythm guitars, lead and backing vocals, keyboards, bass guitar, and woodwind, in addition to writing or co-writing some of the group's material. Laine and the McCartneys were the nucleus of the band and were reduced to a trio twice. The most acclaimed Wings album, Band on the Run, and the majority of material released upon London Town were written and recorded by Wings as a trio. Laine was also a frequent contributor to the songwriting process and as a lead vocalist. He wrote and sang several songs himself, Time to Hide, Again and Again and Again, co-wrote a number of compositions on Band on the Run and London Town, and sang lead vocals on McCartney's songs in full, The Note You Never Wrote, or, in part, I Lie Around, Picasso's Last Words, Spirits of Ancient Egypt. During Wings' live concerts, Laine often performed Go Now, his hit with the Moody Blues, as well as Time to Hide. During his time in Wings, Laine also released 2 solo albums, Laine 1973 and Holy Days 1976, the latter of which was also recorded by Wings' core trio of Laine and the McCartneys. With Wings, Laine enjoyed the biggest commercial and critical success of his career. The non-album single, Mall of Kintyre, co-written with McCartney, became a hit, reaching number 1 in the UK singles chart in 1977 and being the highest-selling single in the country until 1984. Deliver Your Children, from the album London Town, similarly co-written with McCartney and sung by Laine, was released as a double A-side with I've Had Enough in the Netherlands, where it charted at number 13. In January 1980, after Wings' leader McCartney was arrested for possession of marijuana on arrival at an airport in Japan where they were booked to perform a sellout tour, the band's future became uncertain. Laine released his third solo album, Japanese Tears, with the title track as the single. It included several songs recorded by Wings over the years. Laine also formed the short-lived Denny Laine band with Wings' final drummer, Steve Hawley. Though Wings briefly reunited in late 1980, on April 27, 1981, Laine announced he was leaving Wings due to McCartney's reluctance to tour in the wake of the murder of John Lennon. Denny Laine, British musician who co-founded the Moody Blues and Paul McCartney's Wings, last words before he died. So wise, so young, they say, do never live long. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid and broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride."